It wasn't the fire alarm. That's what I told myself when the flashing red lights reflected in the hotel's glass elevator shaft. I stood there holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider, hers with a twist of lime, mine untouched, trying to convince myself it was just a tech glitch. But the universe doesn't glitch. It warns. 3 minutes earlier, I'd been standing by the dessert bar, watching her laugh from across the room. She had that laugh she saves for other people, the one that's half performance, half flirt. I used to think it was charming, magnetic, the kind of laugh you wanted to be the reason for. Then Elliot walked by. Again. That was his third lap. And every time, Ren's eyes followed. When she said she needed to take a quick call, I offered to come with her. She smiled too gently and said, "No need. Just someone from Seattle, I need to calm down. Be right back." But I knew. Something in the way her heel clicked just a little faster than usual. So I followed. The rooftop was quiet, wind brushing past string lights and the faint clatter of glasses from downstairs. I walked past potted palms, past the pool deck no one used, toward the far stairwell. The door was cracked. Inside, dimly lit by a red exit sign and the glow of a vending machine, I saw her hand against the wall. His lips on hers. Not fumbling. Not awkward. They had rhythm. She didn't see me at first. He did. Elliot froze like a deer under headlights. She turned slowly. I saw recognition hit her eyes, but it wasn't panic. It wasn't regret. It was irritation. "You just ended our marriage," I said quietly. I didn't shout. I didn't move. And she tilted her head like a parent explaining math to a child and said, "No, you're wrong." I remember blinking a few times, unsure if she meant it sarcastically. She didn't. She kissed him again, on the cheek this time, then adjusted her blazer like she was late for a meeting. I walked away. Not fast. Not slow. Just mechanical. When I got back downstairs, the cider in my hand had gone warm. I left both glasses on the registration table and walked out without a coat. The cold didn't bother me. It never does when you're in shock. But that was just the first lie. The kiss was nothing compared to what came next. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. The lights were off, the fridge hummed like it knew a secret, and I kept glancing at the door like it might open and rewind everything. But it didn't. No key turned in the lock. No footsteps. Just silence. At 3:12 a.m., I heard a ping. Her text. Just one sentence. "Can we talk when I get home?" Not sorry. Not explanation. Not what you saw wasn't what it looked like. Just that. Cold. Transactional. Like we were co-workers who needed to schedule a meeting after a mildly awkward email thread. She came home at 6:41 a.m. I watched through the peephole as she paused outside the door. She looked composed, like she'd practiced this moment in her head and decided emotions would be inefficient. She was wearing the same emerald green dress from the gala. Still perfect, except now it looked like armor. Her lipstick had faded, but I noticed the smudge on her wrist where she'd tried wiping some off. When she walked in, she didn't say my name. She didn't ask how I was. She just placed a sealed envelope on the counter. "Before you speak," she said, "read this." I didn't move. She slid it toward me like it was some kind of peace offering. White envelope. Lipstick stain on the flap. No name on the front. I didn't open it. I just looked at her and asked one question. "How long has it been going on?" Ren didn't blink. "Define it," she said, and I swear to you, in that moment, something inside me cracked. Not the loud kind of crack, but the slow, splintering kind. The kind that doesn't bleed, it echoes. She finally admitted that it had been casual. Her word. A casual thing that happened maybe 5 or 6 times, but not recently, of course. No, that would be too much. She insisted the kiss I saw was a mistake, born out of emotional confusion after a stressful quarter at work. She used the phrase "context matters" like it was a magic spell that would erase what I saw. When I didn't respond, she sat across from me and asked, "Do you really think one moment should erase 8 years of us?" And that's when I realized she hadn't come home to apologize. She came home to win, to negotiate, to frame this as a disagreement, not a betrayal. She was trying to control the narrative. Control me. I didn't open the envelope. I didn't want to see what was inside. Some neatly written bullet points justifying infidelity? A letter about how we lost touch, and she felt invisible? A breakup pre-written before the gala even began? Instead, I asked her to leave. For real. No drama. No yelling. I just said, "You need to leave, Ren." Right now. She hesitated, then reached for the envelope and said, "You'll regret not reading this." I said nothing. She left, quietly, just like she had at the party. But here's the part that messes with me. When I finally opened that envelope hours later, after sitting in the same chair without moving for what felt like forever, there wasn't a letter inside. There were photos. 3 of them. All printed. All glossy. One of her and Elliot in a hotel room mirror. One of a dinner at some upscale place I didn't recognize. And one of me, taken from behind, at our cabin upstate. Through the window, I stared at that last photo until my eyes burned. And I realized, this wasn't just infidelity. This was a game. A plan. And I wasn't just the husband. I was the pawn. I didn't leave the apartment for 2 days after I found the photos. I kept the blinds shut, the phone off, and the TV playing nothing but soft jazz on mute. Not because I liked jazz, but because silence felt too loud. My brain wouldn't stop replaying that photo, the one taken from outside the cabin window, of me sitting on the couch, back turned, completely unaware. I remember that weekend. I thought it had been peaceful. Thought Ren had taken a nap while I read. Thought I was safe. The cabin is 3 hours from the city. No neighbors, no cameras, no service. I'd always thought of it as our little pocket of nowhere. Now I wondered how long she'd been planning this. How many steps ahead she had always been. How far I'd fallen behind without noticing. On the 3rd day, I finally turned my phone back on. There were 9 missed calls from Ren, 1 from an unknown number, and a voicemail from my friend Jonah that just said, "Hey man, you okay? Saw something weird. Call me." I ignored them all, except Jonas. I called him back. He told me he'd seen Ren a few nights ago. Not at the gala. He didn't know about that yet. But after. He swore he saw her on 52nd, outside a place called Henley's, arguing with a man in a gray coat. He said she looked off. Not angry. Not sad. Just calculated. Like she was directing a scene instead of reacting to one. The man wasn't Elliot. And then Jonas said something that made my blood go cold. She was holding an envelope. Looked just like one of those wedding invitation ones. White. Thick paper. I only noticed because she dropped it when she turned too fast. I hadn't told anyone about the envelope. Not the photos. Not the kiss. Nothing. That night, I sat at my laptop and searched Henley's 52nd. It was a private bar. Invite only. No phone number. No public website. The only mentions were on Reddit threads about quiet places for high-end professionals to meet discreetly. I felt sick. This wasn't an affair. It was something. Larger. Coordinated. Hidden in plain sight. I kept looking through old emails, photos, anything I could dig up. That's when I found a forgotten shared album in my Google Photos titled Room 506. It had one photo. Blurry. A hotel hallway. Door just slightly ajar. Timestamped 6 months ago, 11:47 p.m. I don't remember ever taking it. And yet it was in the album. I scrolled down to the metadata. Uploaded by Ren's work account. Shared only with me. Why would she send me that? Why name it something so specific? Was it a breadcrumb? A threat? A mistake? I called the hotel the next morning. Told them I'd stayed there last April and needed a receipt reissued. I gave them Ren's company name and a fake room number, just to fish. The receptionist paused, then asked, "Would this be for room 506, Mr. Calder?" My stomach sank. "Yes," I said. "That one." Just to confirm. This was for 2 guests. I didn't respond. I hung up. Now I knew. Ren had booked the room. She'd made sure it was traceable. She'd shared the photo. And if Jonah saw her with another envelope, then Elliot wasn't the only one. Which means I wasn't the only pawn. But here's what really pushed me over the edge. That night, I checked our mail. 1 letter. No return address. Inside, a Polaroid. Old school. Faded slightly at the edges. It showed me again. This time leaving our apartment last month, carrying groceries. Written on the back, in her handwriting. "You've been watched longer than you think. This isn't just infidelity. This is surveillance. And I have no idea how deep it goes. You don't notice how loud a doorknob is until you're turning it slowly at 3 a.m., trying not to wake up someone who isn't there anymore." That night, I left the apartment. I don't even remember making the decision. I just remember looking down at the Polaroid again. Me holding a grocery bag, frozen mid-step like an animal caught in a trail cam, and thinking, I need to move. My hands were shaking, keys rattling like wind chimes, and I didn't even lock the door behind me. I just walked. No jacket, no plan. Just the cold and the growing echo of everything I didn't know. I ended up outside her office building downtown. 11 floors of glass and fake friendliness. I'd been here maybe twice before, once to drop off a charger she forgot, and once during an open house she helped organize. That night, it looked different. Sterile. All the lights were off except one, the top floor conference room. It wasn't an accident. Someone was up there, pacing slowly, back and forth. Their silhouette passed behind the frosted glass panels like a shadow stuck on a loop. I watched for 5 full minutes, heart pounding in my throat, until the lights finally clicked off. The elevator lights flickered on. I ducked behind a newspaper stand like this was some spy thriller, but all I saw was a man in a suit step out alone and walk across the street like he had no idea he'd just been part of the worst week of my life. Back home, I couldn't shake the image. Something was happening in that office after hours, and I wasn't supposed to know about it. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I opened her laptop. She never signed out of anything. Probably assumed I never had the spine to look. Maybe she was right, until now. There was nothing interesting in her email inbox. Most things had already been deleted. But I found something in her calendar, events that had been scheduled and immediately canceled. Dozens of them, all labeled with only first names. Rye, Clara, Devin, Isabel, Jude. Never full names. Never recurring. Always just once. Always in different locations, private clubs, corner hotel lobbies, even a cemetery once. No locations were linked to her company. None of them to Elliot. I recognized exactly 0 of the names. And then one detail changed everything. One entry, April 3rd, for PM. The only one marked with a double initial, MC. Not a name she'd ever mentioned. But the meeting location? That same cabin we used to go to, the one from the photo, the one where I'd been unknowingly photographed through a window. That wasn't our weekend getaway. That was a meeting spot. I started reverse searching the names. Most came up blank. Rye and Clara? Nothing. But when I searched Isabel plus consulting plus our city, I found something. An old news article from 4 years ago. Local tech consultant found dead in apparent suicide. No foul play suspected. Isabel M., age 29. No criminal history. Found in her apartment. Police ruled it clean. But buried in the comments section was a throwaway post from someone anonymous. Funny how everyone around them disappears or ends up quiet. Ask WC. She knows. WC. Ren called her. I froze. This wasn't about cheating anymore. This wasn't about betrayal or hurt feelings or even love. This was something else. Something layered. Planned. Scripted. I started to ask myself questions I never thought I'd ask about the woman I married. Was she part of something bigger? Was she using me? Was I even supposed to find any of this? And most terrifying of all, was I in danger? Because if people around her were going silent, then why was I still here? I didn't sleep that night. Just stared at my phone screen, rereading old texts from Ren, looking for a sign, a code, a mistake. I got nothing. But at 5:22 a.m., a message lit up my screen from a number I didn't recognize. You're asking questions. She's not the only one watching. I stared at the message. You're asking questions. She's not the only one watching. Until my phone dimmed on its own. I didn't reply. What could I even say? Who are you? What do you want? It would sound desperate, and something about the tone didn't feel threatening. It felt corrective, like they were trying to keep me on script. But I was already off script, wasn't I? I decided to trace the number. I've worked in IT before. I'm not a hacker or anything, but I know enough to get dangerous. The number was a VoIP line, routed through a series of temp servers, probably masked through 2 or 3 relay IPs across different cities. But the last ping was local, less than 10 miles away. Not exact, but close enough to know they were watching in person. So I drove. No plan. Just a radius to follow and adrenaline shaking in my veins like coffee made of lightning. I ended up circling through industrial blocks, warehouses converted into artist studios, tech incubators, and shell office spaces with no logos on the doors. I didn't even know what I was looking for until I saw him. A man in a gray wool coat, sitting alone at a bus stop, even though no buses ran that route anymore. He wasn't moving, wasn't looking at a phone, wasn't listening to anything. Just sitting. Still. And I swear to God, he was holding a notebook that looked half-burned. The edges curled in, like he'd fished it out of a fire. I pulled over. He didn't flinch. He looked at me like he'd been waiting. "You're Harris," he said, before I even introduced myself. His voice was rough, not old, just weathered, like someone who hadn't spoken freely in a long time. Yes, I said, standing just far enough away that I could still run if I had to. He nodded once. She doesn't know you've gone this far yet. That's good. She always underestimates men who appear sentimental. I didn't even ask how he knew her. I didn't have to. He handed me the notebook. Not a word. Just stood, walked away, disappeared around the corner like a ghost returning to fog. I never saw his face clearly. Maybe that was the point. Inside the notebook were fragments. Torn out receipts, annotated calendars, fragments of email printouts. At first, nothing made sense. Until I found the page that said this. Jude, November 2nd, room 506, same pattern. She films. He panics. Threatened exposure. Found dead 4 days later. Overdose. Another page, scrawled in fast, tight handwriting. Pattern, emotional tether, surveillance, documentation, confrontation, removal. Legal pressure or psychological pressure. Sometimes both. And finally, in the back, barely legible through the soot. They think she's a closer. She thinks she's untouchable. But he's the one who keeps the archive. The archive. A place. A person. A server. I didn't know yet. But it was the first solid lead I'd had that pointed to something outside of Ren. Someone beyond her. Something she might not even fully control. At the bottom of that last page was an address. I won't write the whole thing here, in case this gets traced. But it was in a neighborhood I hadn't visited since college. Bad cell reception. Half-renovated brownstones. One of those places where everything looks normal from the outside, but the silence feels heavy in your chest. I drove there that night. Parked across the street from the building. 3rd floor, windows blacked out. No buzzer. No mailbox. Just a single camera above the door, pointed not outward, but down, toward the handle. As if watching who touched it mattered more than who approached. I didn't knock. I didn't try to enter. Not yet. I needed to know more before I walked through a door that might not open again. When I got home, my apartment had been entered. Nothing stolen. Nothing broken. Just rearranged. Subtle things. The salt shaker on the left instead of the right. A glass moved an inch forward. My phone charger unplugged and neatly coiled on the counter, like someone wanted to remind me they could come and go whenever they wanted. And worst of all, on the mirror in the bathroom, written in red lipstick. You're asking the wrong questions. It was her shade, the one from the gala. But I don't think she was the one who left it. I think someone else wants me to stop looking. Which is how I know I need to keep going. I didn't go back to work after that night. I couldn't. Every time I tried to look at my inbox, or even make coffee, my mind just went back to that mirror, that message in her lipstick. You're asking the wrong questions. It felt like a taunt, but also a warning. The kind that only makes sense later, when it's already too late. I kept replaying the details. How someone got in, how they knew which shade she wore, how they made it clear that they were inside my space, but didn't take anything. It wasn't theft. It was communication. A message written in red. I decided to find the address from the notebook, the one linked to the archive. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. No note, no text, no call. Just locked the door and left. The building sat between a closed-down florist and an old insurance office that hadn't updated its signage since the 80s. The 3rd-floor windows were covered in black film, just like before. I walked around the block twice before working up the nerve to go inside. The front door wasn't locked. No buzzer, no receptionist, no elevator music, just the faint hum of fluorescent lights somewhere above. The hallway smelled like old paper and cleaning solution. I followed the sound until I found a staircase and climbed to the 3rd floor. The door at the top had a brass plate that read simply, M. Cavendish, Consulting. The initials matched the calendar entry. MC. I knocked once. Silence. Knocked again. Nothing. Then I heard it. A chair moving, slow footsteps, and the sound of a latch sliding open. The man who appeared looked nothing like what I expected. Late 50s maybe, neat beard, calm eyes, gray vest over a white shirt. He didn't look dangerous. He looked tired. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. I need answers, I told him. About Ren Calder. About the people I hesitated. The people who disappear. He studied me for a moment, then opened the door wider. Then you'd better come in before someone sees you. Inside, the air was cold, dry, filled with the faint hum of machines. Stacks of binders lined the walls, labeled only with years and codes. 2018-2A, 2019-3C, 2020-1B. At the center of the room was an old desktop computer, its screen flickering with green text against a black background. The man walked over to it and pressed a key. The monitor blinked alive. "I'm the keeper," he said. "That's what she calls me. But I was here long before her. She just inherited what was left." "Inherited what?" I asked. "What is this?" He smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "A collection. Insurance. Evidence. Whatever word makes it easier to sleep. Every person you've found, Jude, Isabel, even Elliot, they're not random. They were part of the same network. Ren didn't seduce them. She studied them. She gathered information, compromised them, and handed it over to people who could use it." I felt the air leave my lungs. "So she's working for someone?" "She's always working for someone," he said. "That's what makes her valuable. She creates leverage, emotional or otherwise. She doesn't just cheat. She rewrites the narrative. Makes the truth inconvenient." I tried to process that. "Then why me?" He leaned back in his chair. "Because you weren't supposed to find out. You were her normal, her balance. Every operator needs an alibi, a stable home, a believable life. You were the photograph on her desk that said, 'See, I'm harmless.'" My hands started trembling. "Then why the photos of me? The notes? The envelopes?" He turned the monitor toward me. On the screen, a folder was open. Inside were dozens of subfolders, each labeled with a first name, the same names from her calendar. But one stood out at the bottom. Harris. I clicked it. The screen filled with images, videos, transcripts. Me at the cabin, me walking home, me sleeping on the couch. "She documented me?" I whispered. "She documents everyone," he said. "It's how she stays one step ahead. But you weren't meant to see this. The fact that you did means she's lost control of the story." I looked at him. "Then why are you helping me?" He stood slowly and walked toward the window. "Because I'm tired. And because you deserve to know what comes next." "What comes next?" He turned. "She's going to make you disappear. Not physically, but publicly. Reputation, job, everything. She'll make sure the record shows that you were unstable, paranoid, maybe even violent. By the time she's finished, everyone will think she was the victim." My mouth went dry. "You're saying she's already doing it?" He nodded. "She's probably already started." I left his office in a daze. The air outside felt heavy, unreal. My phone buzzed as soon as I stepped onto the street. A message from my manager. "Harris, we need to talk. HR received a report about your behavior. Please call ASAP." I didn't call. I couldn't. My world was already spinning too fast. When I reached my car, there was an envelope under the wiper blade. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Ren, sitting in a cafe, smiling across the table at someone. Me. Except it wasn't me. The man in the photo looked just like me, but a few years younger, wearing a suit I'd never owned. On the back, in her handwriting, "I told you you're wrong." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even sit down. I just stood in the hallway of my apartment for hours, staring at the photo, the one of Ren sitting across from a man who looked exactly like me. Same jawline, same hair, same crooked smile I've hated since high school. But it wasn't me. I knew it wasn't. The suit he wore was too tailored, too expensive, something I'd never own. And the way he leaned in toward her, eyes locked, easy and relaxed, intimate. Not cautious like me, not doubting. It wasn't just a look-alike. It was a version of me she preferred. I tried to tell myself it had to be a cousin, a trick of the light, some digital manipulation, a psychological game. But deep down, I knew that photo was real. And older. There was a timestamp on the bottom corner, faint but visible, 2019. 06/21. That was 3 years ago. We were married by then. I was at a conference in Denver that week. I checked my calendar twice to be sure. She met him while I was away. That wasn't coincidence. That was design. I ran the photo through a basic reverse image search. Nothing. Then through a few face comparison tools. Even signed up for a couple shady AI match sites that claimed to find lookalike relatives worldwide. After several hours and a drain on my bank account, one result came up flagged with 92% match confidence. Name, William Liam Harrow. Occupation, private consulting, East Coast operations. Known alias, Eric Montclair. I froze. Montclair. M. Cavendish. Different names. Same initials. Same pattern. I dug deeper and found a document dump from an old lawsuit involving a defunct data security firm based out of New Jersey. The filings were dense, full of legal jargon, but one name kept appearing in the witness redactions: Ren Calder, as an outside contractor, listed as a behavioral analyst. Not a marketer, not a strategist, a behavioral analyst. This wasn't corporate espionage. This wasn't infidelity. This was profiling, and I was the subject, or at least one of them. I drove to my parents' house that morning. I needed grounding. I needed to see something real from before Ren, before all this spiraled out. My mom was hesitant to let me in. Said she got a strange voicemail from a colleague of mine asking if I'd been acting strangely lately. When I asked who it was, she said they didn't leave a name. They'd already started. I asked to see the old family albums. Not digital, real ones. My mom kept them in a plastic tub in the attic, carefully labeled by decade. As I flipped through the 2000s, my heart began to pound. There, in a Christmas photo from 2004, was me, standing beside my uncle's old pickup. But next to me was him. Liam. Eric. Whatever his name really was. Same face. Same posture. But dressed sharper. Standing just behind me, like he belonged there. Like he always had. I showed it to my mother. She blinked. Oh, what's his name? Your cousin's friend, I think? Or one of the exchange students. But we never had exchange students. And my cousin had been overseas that entire year. He was planted there. He's been part of this longer than Ren has even known me. Or maybe, God help me, maybe he's the one who introduced her to me. I drove home on autopilot. I don't remember traffic lights. Don't remember unlocking the front door. I just remember walking into the living room and hearing a familiar voice say, "You weren't supposed to find that photo." She was there. Ren. Sitting on the couch, legs crossed, calm as ever. She'd let herself in again. I didn't respond. Just stared. She continued. He was an earlier version. Trial run. We thought emotional compatibility was the metric. Turns out it wasn't. It's pattern resistance. That's what made you more useful. I finally found my voice. What are you talking about? She tilted her head, like she always did when explaining something condescending. You were never the subject, Harris. You were the control. That was when it all shattered. Everything. Every moment. Every trip. Every fight. Every touch. It wasn't love. It wasn't even manipulation. It was testing. They weren't studying me because I mattered. They were studying what I'd do when someone else mattered more. I asked her, who is they? And she smiled. Not cruel, not smug. Almost proud. You'll meet them soon. Then she stood, walked past me, and let herself out, humming the same song she hummed the night we first kissed in my kitchen. Only this time, it sounded like a funeral march. After Ren left that night, something inside me broke, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't grief. It wasn't rage. It was something quieter, calmer. Like the moment just before a storm finally passes and the air settles. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't spinning. I was clear. Because now, I understood the truth. I wasn't the victim. I wasn't the pawn. I wasn't even the subject. I was the witness. I spent the next 3 days doing the opposite of what Ren, or they, expected. I didn't run. I didn't hide. I started writing. Every detail, every photo, every conversation, every scrap from that burned notebook. I wrote it down by hand, over 200 pages. And then I scanned it, encrypted it, and scheduled a timed release to a dozen news outlets, attorneys, and anonymous leak servers. It wasn't revenge. It was sunlight. Because that's what they couldn't control. That's what all of this had been about, controlling the story, manufacturing reality. But when you shine enough light on shadows, they vanish. 2 days after I finished compiling everything, I received a single text from an unknown number. You've made your move. You're clear. Stay out. And that was it. Silence. No more messages. No more photos. No lipstick on mirrors. No mysterious men in coats. Ren disappeared completely. No digital traces. No sightings. Not even a credit card ping. She became a ghost overnight. But I was alive. And I was free. I sold the apartment. Moved upstate. Not to the old cabin. We both knew that place was poisoned. But to a small fixer-upper on a ridge above a lake, where the cell signal barely works and the wind sounds like water moving through leaves. I replaced all the windows myself. Painted the walls. Built a bookshelf from scratch, even though I had no idea what I was doing. And I added curtains. Yellow ones. The kind Ren always said clashed with modern design. The kind my grandmother had in her kitchen when I was 5, where everything smelled like cinnamon and would smoke. The kind that made a house feel like it was mine. A year passed, then 2, and slowly, I rebuilt something. Not the version of me I'd been before. That person was too trusting, too eager to make things work that were never real. No, this version of me was quieter, more watchful, but not closed. I started seeing someone new. Her name's Elise. She's nothing like Ren. Not sharp-edged or strategic. She doesn't analyze everything I say. She laughs awkwardly at her own jokes and forgets where she parked her car at least twice a week. She knows there are pieces of me that were rearranged by what happened, but she never asks me to be whole. She just shows up. Sometimes we sit on the porch and say nothing at all. The cactus from the apartment? I brought it with me. It sits on the windowsill now, beside the yellow curtains. Still alive. Still stubborn. I think it gets it. Last week, I received a manila envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, one photo. Me and Elise. Sitting on the porch. She's laughing at something I said. I don't remember what it was. On the back, in Ren's handwriting, just 2 words. Good choice. I don't know where she is. I don't need to, because I'm no longer part of her story. But more importantly, she's no longer part of mine.